There are people who move through life like every small inconvenience is a personal offense. A slow reply from a friend becomes a betrayal. A driver cuts them off, and it turns into a declaration of war. Someone messes up their coffee order, and their whole day is ruined. Their emotional state rises and falls depending on everything and everyone around them. It's like they're constantly trapped in a never-ending emotional roller coaster, and they don't even realize they're strapped in. They react to every signal, every shift in energy, every perceived slight until even the smallest ripple becomes a storm. And then there's another kind of person, rare, unbothered still. The type who walks through the same chaos with an entirely different rhythm. They don't flinch when they're tested. They don't collapse under stress. Someone mocks them and they just smile. A plan falls apart and they simply adapt. They operate with a level of composure that feels almost unreal. It's as if they live in a different dimension, one where the usual rules don't apply and emotional turbulence doesn't pull them under. What's the difference? It's not luck, it's not genetic, and it's definitely not because life treats them better. The difference is perspective. Most people carry around a fundamental misunderstanding of how emotions work. They believe the outside world is responsible for how they feel. They think other people's behavior determines their mood, that circumstances have the power to define their peace. But those who are truly untouchable, who seem unaffected by the chaos, they've learned something most haven't, that it's never what happens, but how you choose to interpret what happens that shapes your experience. The event itself is neutral. The meaning you attach to it, the narrative you build around it, that's where all your emotional energy goes. When someone cuts you off in traffic, you can decide it's a personal attack, stew about it for hours and let it poison your entire mood. Or you can realize that person might be going through something completely unrelated to you and move on. Same event, completely different outcomes. And the only thing that changed was the internal story. The same goes for every so-called bad day. Something frustrating happens in the morning, and without realizing it, you carry that frustration into every moment afterward. It's not the event itself that ruins your day. It's your decision to replay it over and over like it's stuck on a mental loop. When a stranger says something harsh, it only sticks if you give it weight. Rejection only wounds when you tie your worth to it. But most of what consumes people's minds isn't actually happening outside of them. It's a storm created by their interpretation, assumptions, and projections. This reactive way of living becomes a habit. You fall into the pattern of letting every external input shape your internal reality. Your attention becomes a currency you spend recklessly. Your peace, something you trade for validation, closure, or momentary control. But it doesn't have to be that way. The moment you start to see your thoughts as the source of your emotion, not the world around you, is the moment everything begins to change. Now, it's easy to agree with this in theory, but living it is another story. Because when someone crosses a line, or when life feels unfair, or when emotion comes surging in like a flood, you forget everything you know and default back to reaction. That's why this isn't just about insight. It's about training. And that training begins with reclaiming your energy. Most people give away their energy without realizing it. A rude comment online leads to hours of internal dialogue, constructing arguments that will never be heard. An offhand remark from a colleague becomes a 3-day obsession. A slight inconvenience is allowed to color every interaction for the rest of the day. You wouldn't give away your money to anyone who asked for it, but you let your peace be hijacked without question. It's emotional bankruptcy on autopilot, so you have to start asking different questions. Will this matter in a week? Does this person's opinion affect the trajectory of my life? Is this problem even mine to solve, or am I just absorbing someone else's dysfunction? Most of the time, what you're carrying isn't even yours. It's someone else's bad mood, someone else's insecurity, someone else's projection. And when you respond to it, when you internalize it, you're voluntarily stepping into a role you never asked to play. Think about it. When you get upset because someone's rude, when you feel the need to defend yourself against someone's doubt or condescension, What you're really doing is giving them permission to control your inner state. You're saying, here, take my clarity, take my calm. I'll trade it for this temporary reaction. And then you wonder why you feel drained, tense, disconnected. Your peace of mind is your most valuable asset. And the people who thrive, the ones who glide through the world with a quiet power, they've realized that most things simply don't deserve their energy. That argument, not worth it. That stranger's judgment, irrelevant. That inconvenience, already over. They've stopped feeding the drama. They've stopped negotiating with noise. And in doing so, they've reclaimed something most people haven't even realized they lost: their emotional freedom. What's interesting is that once you stop reacting, the world starts to shift around you. The people who once triggered you start to lose their power. Their words bounce off instead of cutting deep. Their actions no longer pull you into their storms. The things that used to derail you don't even register anymore. Because now, you're no longer participating in emotional battles that were never yours to begin with. And there's a next level to this. Because detachment doesn't just make you unshakable, it makes you magnetic. People start to sense something different. They test you less. They respect your space more. They notice that you don't flinch, don't fold, don't run toward chaos just to feel alive. And in a world where so many are spinning, that kind of stillness is powerful. That kind of clarity is rare. But this power comes with a catch. You can't fake it. You can't pretend to be unaffected while secretly obsessing. True detachment isn't performative, it's real. It comes from within. It comes from choosing stillness over reaction again and again until it becomes your default. Until life stops being a battlefield and becomes a landscape. Until you realize that you're no longer the victim of your circumstances, but the one who decides what they mean. And this doesn't just apply to personal life. It applies everywhere: relationships, careers, social settings. The calmest person in the room is always the most powerful. Not because they have nothing to say, but because they don't need to say it. Not because they're cold, but because they've mastered the art of internal regulation. The moment you stop needing to defend your worth, you begin to embody it. The moment you stop reacting, you start leading. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. Most people don't want this kind of power. They say they do. They say they want peace, detachment, control. But when the moment comes, they react. They take the bait. Their buttons get pushed and they spiral. It's not because they're weak, it's because they've never learned to pause. And that pause, that space between stimulus and response, is where your transformation lives. If you're truly serious about becoming someone who isn't ruled by external chaos, then the work begins within. Not with theory or mantras, but with practice. The kind of deliberate, disciplined practice that rewires your emotional reflexes and restores your inner sovereignty. This isn't about becoming emotionally numb. It's not about pretending nothing matters. It's about choosing not to react when provoked, choosing not to collapse into every emotional storm, choosing not to let the world dictate your state of mind. Because the truth is, most people are running on programming they didn't choose. From early on, we're trained to respond instantly to discomfort. Someone disrespects you, defend yourself. Something feels unfair, complain. You feel pain, react. There's no space, no pause, no control. It's like walking through life with an open control panel. Anyone can walk up, push a button, and you respond exactly the way they want. But imagine if you could shut that panel off entirely. Imagine becoming someone whose internal world is off limits, impenetrable, sovereign. That's where emotional immunity begins. Not by suppressing what you feel, but by detaching from the compulsive need to act on every emotion the moment it arises. The first skill is observation without absorption. Most people are emotional sponges. They absorb the energy in every room, the mood of everyone they encounter. Someone else is anxious. Now they're anxious. Someone else is passive-aggressive. Now they're angry, but you don't have to absorb everything you notice. You can see what's happening, understand it, and still choose not to carry it. It's like standing in the rain but not getting wet. You can witness rudeness and know it says more about the other person. You can hear criticism and let it pass through without attaching meaning. You don't deny reality, you simply refuse to let it invade your peace. Because once you learn to observe from that place of stillness, you stop giving strangers and small events the power to hijack your day. The next layer is mastering the pause. Every emotional mistake, every word you wish you hadn't said, every reaction you wish you could take back happened because you didn't pause. Because your brain was hijacked by an emotion that rushed in and took the wheel. But in that split second between stimulus and response, you have power. If you can insert awareness into that space, you reclaim control. The next time someone says something triggering, pause. The next time anxiety rises, pause. The next time you feel the urge to react, pause. Even 2 seconds of stillness can rewire your response. There's a question you can ask yourself that changes everything. Is this worth my energy? Because almost every time the answer is no. Most arguments, most emotional outbursts, most of the things that feel urgent in the moment are irrelevant a few hours later. The world constantly offers you bait, opportunities to overreact, defend, spiral, but you don't have to bite. Drama only survives through participation. Gossip dies in silence. Toxicity loses power when ignored. Conflict fizzles when you don't engage. If someone is trying to provoke you and you give them nothing, not even attention, you cut the fuel line to their game. That's why the most dangerous person in any situation is the one who won't play. They don't argue, they don't explain, they don't absorb projections, and because of that they remain untouched. The more you practice this, the more things begin to shift around you. People who used to test you back off. Those who once relied on your emotional reactions to feel powerful lose access. Even the situations that once triggered you start to feel light, insignificant. You start to feel what it's like to be emotionally untouchable. But what about the moments when your emotions feel too big to ignore? When the pull to react is overwhelming, that's where most people break. They believe emotional detachment means suppressing what they feel, but it's not about suppression. It's about transformation. The goal is not to deny emotion, but to change your relationship with it. Emotions don't need to be feared, they need to be understood. Think of emotions like muscles. They can be trained, developed, refined. Most people treat their emotional responses as fixed, as if they're just wired a certain way. But emotional resilience isn't genetic, it's earned. Some people fall apart at the smallest stressor. Others remain grounded in the face of chaos. It's not because life is easier for them. It's because they've trained their system to handle intensity without collapsing. Your brain operates on patterns. If you've always responded to stress with panic, your brain will keep doing that. If you've always responded to criticism with defense, it becomes an automatic loop. To break that loop, you have to consciously do the opposite. Feel the urge to snap, take a breath. Want to argue, stay silent. Tempted to spiral, shift your focus. At first, it'll feel unnatural. Your nervous system will scream. Your ego will want to fight. But if you keep doing it, a new pattern forms. And one day, something that used to trigger you won't even register. That's when you know you've leveled up. Another essential shift is in your inner dialogue. Most people don't realize how much of their emotional state is shaped by the stories they tell themselves. You interpret every event through a mental narrative. So when something bothers you, ask, what story am I telling myself right now? Is it true? Is it useful? Usually the story is a distortion. It's your mind filling in gaps with fear, insecurity, or old wounds. But once you question the story, its grip weakens. And when the story changes, your feelings follow. There's also a powerful tactic for disarming others emotionally. When people try to trigger you, they expect resistance. They want to see you flinch. But what happens when you give them nothing? Or better yet, when you agree with them in a way they didn't expect? Someone says, "You're so stubborn," and you say, "Absolutely. It's one of my best qualities." They say, "You never take anything seriously," and you smile, "I try not to." It throws them off. It short-circuits the power dynamic. You've just taken their energy and flipped it back with calm confidence. This isn't about sarcasm or deflection. It's about ownership. When you show that nothing they say can rattle you, you send a message. I don't belong to you. You don't get to pull my strings. And once someone realizes they can't control your emotional state, they stop trying. You become immune, and with that immunity comes respect. At the heart of all this lies a single truth. Your emotions are not your enemy. They're your feedback system. They show you where the wounds are, where the stories live, where you still give away your power. But they don't have to control you. You don't have to react every time they knock. You can sit with them, listen, learn, and let them pass without letting them steer. Emotional detachment isn't about disconnecting from life. It's about reconnecting with yourself. It's the decision to stop being a puppet and start being a presence, a grounded, focused, intentional force that moves through the world with calm authority. And in a world addicted to noise, to overreaction, to chaos, that kind of presence is a weapon. It's a shield, it's a revolution. Eventually you stop asking, why did they do this to me? And start asking, why did I give them that much power in the first place? You stop needing to win arguments. You stop needing to be understood by everyone. You stop negotiating your peace. You walk away from things that drain you, not because you're bitter, but because you're done participating in games that don't serve you. And here's the part that few understand. Once you stop reacting, you gain more than peace. You gain clarity. You see people for who they are, not who they pretend to be. You spot manipulation, projection, chaos, not because you're suspicious, but because your silence allows you to observe patterns others miss. You become the calm in the storm, the eye that sees everything without needing to announce it. You become your own anchor. The most powerful people in any room aren't the loudest. They're the ones who need the least from anyone. They don't demand validation. They don't chase reactions. They hold their center, and because of that, they move the room without ever raising their voice. That's the level. And it's not built in a day. It's built choice by choice, moment by moment, breath by breath. Every time you choose not to react, you take back a piece of yourself. Every time you choose silence over impulse, you build emotional muscle. And every time you let go of what doesn't serve you, you make space for what does. This is how it begins. This is how you become untouchable. So if this message spoke to something deep inside you, it's because that version of you, calm, clear, powerful, already exists. You're not building it from scratch. You're remembering. And once you remember, once you see how good it feels to live from that place, you'll never want to go back. This is the path of the grounded, of the resilient, of the unshaken. It's not a fantasy. It's a decision. And it's yours to make right now. Because the moment you stop reacting is the moment you start living on your own terms. Let the world spin. Let others chase chaos. You've got something better: control, peace, and the kind of presence that cannot be touched.